Sobrang di ko pa mapaniwala. Maraming salamat sa suporta at sana patuloy yung suporta niyo sa akin.
Ultimate Meltdown. Charaeva's shocking luck accusation after Manila loss. Eala's icy cold response breaks the internet. Welcome back to Champions Tennisitics, where we bring you the heat, the heartbreak, and the absolute mayhem that unfolds when egos collide on the tennis court. If you thought the drama at the Australian Open was intense, buckle up, because what just went down in Manila makes everything else look like a friendly practice session. We're about to dive deep into the most explosive tennis feud of 2026. And trust me, this one has everything. Tears, tantrums, trophy celebrations, and a verbal knockout that's still echoing around the world. This is the story of how a hometown hero became a savage queen with just one sentence, and how a rising star's composure crumbled into a very public meltdown that has divided the tennis community right down the middle. The 2026 Philippine Women's Open was supposed to be a fairy tale. Picture this: Alexandra Eala, the golden girl of Filipino tennis, returning to her home country with one mission: to lift that trophy in front of her people, her family, and thousands of screaming fans who had waited years to see one of their own conquer on home soil. The atmosphere in Manila wasn't just electric, it was absolutely volcanic. The humidity hung thick in the air like a wet blanket. The temperature was pushing well past the comfort zone, and the noise from the stands was the kind that makes your chest vibrate. This was meant to be Alexandra's coronation, her crowning moment, the day she cemented her legacy as not just a great player, but a national treasure. But here's the thing about tennis: it doesn't care about your script. It doesn't care about your hometown advantage or your fairy tale narrative. Tennis is brutal, unforgiving, and sometimes downright cruel. And on this particular day in Manila, the tennis gods decided to write a different kind of story. One filled with controversy, bitterness, and a war of words that has set the entire sport on fire. Let's talk about Elena Charaeva. The 22-year-old Russian has been turning heads all season with her aggressive baseline game and her ability to paint lines like she's wielding a brush dipped in pure audacity. She's powerful, she's hungry, and she's got the kind of attitude that makes her equally loved and loathed depending on which side of the net you're standing. Charaeva came to Manila as the underdog, but she came to win. She didn't care about the crowd, the heat, or the pressure. She had her eyes locked on that trophy, and for large stretches of the final, it looked like she was going to snatch it right out of Eala's hands. The match itself was an absolute war. Charaeva stormed out of the gates like a woman possessed, hammering ground strokes that had the crowd gasping in disbelief. Her first serve was a weapon of mass destruction. Her forehand was cracking winners from impossible angles, and Eala, for all her skill and composure, seemed rattled. The first set went to Charaeva 6-4, and she celebrated like she'd already won the tournament. The Russian was in complete control, dictating every rally, pushing Eala around the court like a chess master moving pieces on a board. At that moment, anyone watching would have bet their life savings on Charaeva walking away with the title. But Alexandra Eala didn't become a champion by folding under pressure. This is a young woman who has trained with the best, competed on the biggest stages, and carries the weight of an entire nation's expectations on her shoulders. She's faced adversity before, and she knows something that Charaeva was about to learn the hard way. Tennis isn't just about power. It's about strategy, endurance, and most importantly, mental toughness. Between the first and second sets, Eala made adjustments. She stopped trying to match Charaeva's power and instead started using the geometry of the court to her advantage. She moved Charaeva side to side, brought her to the net, pushed her back to the baseline, and forced her to work in that suffocating Manila heat. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. The second set was a grinding, exhausting battle that saw both players pushing their bodies to the absolute limit. Every point felt like it lasted an eternity. The crowd was losing their minds, screaming after every winner, groaning after every error. You could feel the momentum shifting with every game. Charaeva was still hitting hard, but her shots were landing just a little bit wider, just a little bit longer. She was starting to breathe heavier, starting to look at her box with frustration in her eyes. Meanwhile, Eala was feeding off the energy of her home crowd, finding extra legs when she needed them, staying calm when the pressure mounted. At 7-5 in the second set, Eala leveled the match, and suddenly, the fairy tale was back on track. The third set was where things got messy. At 4-all, with the tension so thick you could cut it with a racket, the match reached its breaking point. Charaeva had a break-point opportunity, a chance to serve for the championship. This was her moment. But then, the tennis gods intervened in the most controversial way possible. Eala hit a forehand that clipped the very top of the net cord. The ball hung in the air, seemingly frozen in time, before it trickled over onto Charaeva's side and died. A dead net cord, completely unplayable. The Filipino crowd erupted in celebration. Charaeva stood frozen on the baseline, staring at the net like it had personally betrayed her. Then she exploded. She slammed her racket into the ground with such force that it bounced 3 feet in the air. Her face twisted in frustration, her hands went to her hips, and you could practically see the steam coming out of her ears. But the tennis gods weren't done messing with Charaeva yet. 2 points later, Eala ripped a forehand down the line that landed right on the chalk. A literal millimeter inside the line. Chalk dust flew up like a tiny explosion. It was as close as you can possibly get without being out. Charaeva immediately challenged the call, certain it was long. The stadium fell silent as everyone turned to the big screen, waiting for Hawkeye to deliver its verdict. The replay showed the ball catching the very edge of the line, and by the width of a hair. The call stood. The crowd went absolutely ballistic. Charaeva looked like she was about to have a complete mental breakdown right there on the court. She gestured wildly at the umpire. She shouted toward her coaching box. She threw her hands up at the sky, as if demanding answers from the universe itself. But on the other side of the net, a very different scene was unfolding. Charaeva didn't cry tears of defeat. She didn't embrace the moment or congratulate her opponent with genuine warmth. The handshake at the net was ice cold, barely a touch of palms before Charaeva yanked her hand away. She skipped the customary on-court interview, packed her bag with record speed, and stormed off the court like a thundercloud rolling in before a storm. The crowd booed her exit, but Charaeva didn't care. She was done. And then came the press conference. Oh, the press conference. This is where the real fireworks began, where a frustrated player made a decision that would haunt her for weeks, maybe months, maybe the rest of her career. When Charaeva walked into that press room, she was still visibly shaking with emotion. Her eyes were red, whether from tears or rage or both. Nobody could quite tell. The journalists could sense they were about to get something juicy, and they were absolutely right. When asked to reflect on the match and what went wrong, Charaeva didn't hold back. She didn't offer the usual diplomatic answers about her opponent playing well or it being a tough day at the office. No, Charaeva went full scorched earth. I was the better player today, she said, her voice trembling but defiant. I dictated the match. I had more winners. I had the better strategy. But you cannot fight against luck. The net cord at 4-all in the third set, the ball that was in by 1 millimeter. These things decided the match, not skill. She won only because of luck. If we play that match 10 times, I win 9 of them. Today was just her lucky day. That's not tennis. That's a lottery. The room went silent. Journalists exchanged glances. A few jaws literally dropped. This wasn't just sour grapes. This was a full-blown accusation that Eala's victory was illegitimate, that she didn't deserve the trophy sitting in the other press room, that the tennis gods had unfairly tipped the scales. Within minutes, the clip of Charaeva saying she won only because of luck was racing across social media platforms. Twitter exploded. Instagram was ablaze. TikTok edits were being made in real time with dramatic music and slow-motion replays of the controversial points. The tennis world was absolutely divided. Charaeva's defenders argued she had a legitimate point. They pulled up the match statistics showing she had hit more winners than Eala. They posted slow-motion videos of the net cord, claiming it was the turning point that broke Charaeva's spirit. They argued that luck does play a role in tennis, and sometimes the bounces just don't go your way. These fans felt Charaeva was simply being honest, refusing to sugarcoat a painful loss, and they respected her for speaking her truth even if it was unpopular. But the vast majority of the tennis community saw it differently. They saw a player who couldn't accept responsibility for her own collapse. They saw someone making excuses instead of acknowledging that she choked when it mattered most. They pointed out that every tennis match has lucky bounces, net cords, and close line calls, but champions find a way to win despite them. They argued that mental toughness, the ability to hold your nerve on the big points, is a skill just as important as a powerful forehand, and that Charaeva had failed that test spectacularly. Former champions weighed in on social media. Martina Navratilova tweeted, "Luck evens out over time. Champions make their own luck by staying in the fight when things get tough." Billie Jean King posted, "You win or you lose with grace. Excuses diminish your own efforts and disrespect your opponent's achievement." The criticism was piling up, but Charaeva's camp remained defiant, posting cryptic messages about truth and honesty on social media. And then, Alexandra Eala walked into her press conference. She was glowing, radiating the kind of happiness that only comes from achieving a lifelong dream. The trophy sat on the table beside her, gleaming under the lights. She answered questions about the match, about what the victory meant to her country, about how she managed to turn things around after losing the first set. She was gracious, humble, and composed. And then a reporter decided to light the fuse. "Alexandra, Alina Charaeva just said in her press conference that you only won because of luck. She said the net cord and the line calls decided the match, and that if you played 10 times, she would win 9. What is your response to that?" The room fell silent. Every camera turned to Eala. Every journalist leaned forward, pens poised above notebooks. This was the moment. How would the champion respond to such a direct, public attack on her victory? Would she get angry? Would she fire back? Would she take the high road and ignore it completely? Eala took a slow sip of water. She set the bottle down carefully. She looked directly at the reporter, and a small, knowing smile played at the corners of her lips. When she spoke, her voice was calm, measured, and absolutely deadly. "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity," she began, pausing to let the philosophical quote sink in. "She calls it luck. I call it holding my nerve on the big points. Tennis is played between the ears as much as it's played with the racket. I prepared for this moment my entire life. I prepared to play in front of my home crowd. I prepared to fight when I was down. I prepared to stay calm when the pressure was on. And as for winning 9 times out of 10, Eala paused again, the smile growing just a touch wider. "She's welcome to replay the match in her head as many times as she likes. I'll be busy polishing the trophy." Boom. The room erupted. Journalists were scrambling to write down the quote word for word. Cameras clicked frantically. Within seconds, "I'll be busy polishing the trophy" was trending worldwide. It was the perfect response. It wasn't defensive or angry. It wasn't petty or cruel. It was simply dismissive, the verbal equivalent of a mic drop, a calm and devastating assertion that while Charaeva could live in a world of hypotheticals and what-ifs, Eala would be living in reality with the hardware to prove it. The reaction to Eala's clapback was instantaneous and overwhelming. IGA Swiatek, the current world #1, liked a post quoting Eala within minutes. Coco Gauff commented with fire emojis. Even tennis legends who usually stay above the fray couldn't resist weighing in. John McEnroe, never one to shy away from drama, went on air the next day and said, "That is championship mentality right there." Charaeva showed her age and her immaturity. Eala showed class and killer instinct. You don't whine about luck in a final. You either win or you lose, period. And if you lose, you shake hands, congratulate your opponent, and work harder for next time. What Charaeva did was embarrassing, and what Eala did was put her in her place without even raising her voice. Chris Evert tweeted, "Polishing the trophy. Quote of the year. That's how you handle criticism with grace and confidence." The tennis community had spoken, and the verdict was clear. Eala had won the battle on the court and absolutely demolished Charaeva in the battle of words. But the drama didn't end there. Behind the scenes, sources close to the tour started leaking stories about the growing tension between the two camps. Charaeva's coach reportedly had a heated confrontation with tournament officials, complaining about everything from the tension of the net to the condition of the court surface, searching for any explanation for his player's collapse that didn't involve admitting she mentally fell apart. There were whispers that Charaeva had refused to attend the mandatory post-match dinner because Eala would be there. The locker room, usually a place of professional courtesy, had become a minefield of awkward silences and cold shoulders. And then, just when we thought the story couldn't get any better, the tennis gods decided to add another chapter. The draw for the upcoming Dubai Duty-Free Championships was released, and the projected path has Eala and Charaeva meeting in the round of 16. If both players win their early matches, we're getting a rematch. And this time, it won't just be about tennis. This will be about pride, about vindication, about proving who was right in Manila. Charaeva has painted herself into a corner. By claiming Eala only won because of luck, she's created a situation where she absolutely must win the next meeting. If she loses again, especially if it's in straight sets, she will look foolish. She will look like all talk and no substance, like a player who can't back up her bold claims when it actually matters. Eala, on the other hand, is in the perfect position. She has nothing to prove. She already has the trophy. She already has the psychological advantage. She can walk into that match with complete confidence, knowing that Charaeva will be playing with the weight of her own words crushing down on her shoulders. The pressure is entirely on the Russian. If Eala wins, it validates everything she said in that press conference. If Charaeva wins, she gets to say, "I told you so," but she'll still have lost the war because the one that really mattered, the final in Manila, is already in the history books with Eala's name on it. This feud has also highlighted something fascinating about the current state of women's tennis in 2026. For years, the tour was criticized for being too friendly, too polite, lacking the kind of genuine rivalries that make sports compelling. Players would lose, shake hands, say nice things about each other, and move on. But something has shifted. We're seeing real friction now, real dislike, real personality clashes. And you know what? It's absolutely fantastic for the sport. Rivalries drive viewership. Drama creates storylines. People tune in not just to see great tennis, but to see if the villain gets her comeuppance or if she proves the doubters wrong. Charaeva, whether she intended to or not, has made herself the villain of this narrative. She's getting hate online, sure, but she's also getting attention. Every one of her matches is going to be must-watch television now because people want to see if she can back up her talk or if she's going to crumble again. She's become the heel in professional wrestling terms, the character everyone loves to hate. And while that might be uncomfortable for her personally, it's gold for tournament organizers and broadcasters. The beauty of this rivalry is that it's just getting started. These are two young, talented players who are going to be facing each other for years to come. Every match will carry the weight of Manila. Every press conference will be scrutinized for subtle jabs or signs of lingering tension. The tennis world loves a good rivalry, and we might be witnessing the birth of one of the great ones. Think Serena and Sharapova. Think Nadal and Djokovic. Obviously, Eala and Charaeva have a long way to go to reach those legendary levels, but the foundation is there: skill, personality clash, genuine dislike, and memorable moments. The 2026 season has already given us so much drama, and we're barely into the year. If this is the kind of theater we can expect for the next 10 months, we're in for an absolute treat. Tennis is at its best when there are stakes beyond just rankings and prize money. When there's personal pride on the line, when players genuinely want to beat each other not just to win, but to prove a point, that's when the magic happens. That's when we get matches that transcend the sport and become cultural moments. So here's what we want to know from you, the Champions Tennisitics community. Where do you stand on this controversy? Do you think Charaeva had any validity to her luck argument, or was it pure sour grapes from a player who couldn't handle the pressure? Do you think net cords and close line calls are just part of the game that everyone has to deal with? Or do they fundamentally change the outcome of matches in unfair ways? And what about Eala's response? Was it the perfect balance of class and savagery? Or do you think she should have taken the high road and not engaged with the controversy at all? More importantly, who do you think wins the rematch in Dubai if it happens? Will Charaeva come out with fire and determination, proving that Manila was indeed a fluke and that she is the superior player? Or will Eala demonstrate once again that she has the mental edge, that she knows how to win the big points, and that Charaeva will forever be chasing ghosts and making excuses? The betting odds will be fascinating to watch. The tactical adjustments both players make will be scrutinized by analysts worldwide. And the press conferences afterward, well, those might be even more entertaining than the match itself. This is why we love tennis. This is why we created Champions Tennisitics. Because the sport gives us everything: incredible athleticism, strategic brilliance, dramatic comebacks, and yes, the occasional verbal warfare that makes everything so much more interesting. We'll be following every development in this story, every social media post, every practice session, every interview. When these two step on the court in Dubai, you better believe we'll have wall-to-wall coverage breaking down every point, every look, every gesture. The Battle of Manila was just the opening salvo in what promises to be an epic, multi-year rivalry. Eala has thrown down the gauntlet with her trophy-polishing comment. Charaeva has been challenged to put up or shut up. The stage is set. The drama is real. And we are here for every single second of it. So if you enjoyed this deep dive into the chaos, the controversy, and the absolute savagery of professional tennis, we need you to do us a favor. Smash that like button like Charaeva smashed her racket in frustration. Seriously, give it everything you've got. And if you haven't already subscribed to Champions Tennisitics, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of the drama. We're bringing you the stories, the analysis, the hot takes, and the insider information that you won't find anywhere else. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear from you. Are you Team Eala or Team Charaeva? Do you think luck is a legitimate factor in tennis outcomes or just an excuse for losers? And most importantly, what do you predict happens when these two face off again? We read every comment, and your insights make this community what it is. Share this video with your tennis-loving friends, your sports-obsessed family members, anyone who appreciates a good rivalry and some quality trash talk. This is the kind of story that transcends tennis and becomes pure entertainment. Thank you for watching Champions Tennisitics, your #1 source for everything happening in the world of tennis. We don't just report the scores, we give you the stories behind them, the personalities driving them, and the drama that makes this sport absolutely unmissable. Remember, champions aren't just made on the court. They're made in how they handle victory, how they respond to criticism, and how they polish their trophies while their rivals replay matches in their heads. Until next time, keep swinging, keep fighting, and keep watching. We'll see you in the next one.
I think it's only normal that with the loss comes disappointment and being upset, but then again, it's another opportunity.
Alex, after a terrific year last year, how does it feel to be making your main draw debut at Melbourne?
It feels great. I'm super excited. Kamusta mga kapong Pinoy? Surprise! Excited na akong imbitahin kayong lahat na manood sa mga laban ko sa Mubadala Abu